Good morning, it's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today we are going to talk about negative thinking and how you can stop the negative thinking spiraling into negative emotions. Okay, so first, I want to explain the difference between a negative thought and a negative emotion. It's very important to know the difference between them. This is a very important topic because we think about 80,000 thoughts a day. That's crazy, right? So most of those thoughts you are ignoring, thankfully. You're learning to block out, to disengage from, and only the thoughts that really matter come to the surface. So if they're really positive or really negative. So a lot of times the really negative thoughts get our attention because they threaten our survival instincts of trying to keep us safe. When we have an accumulation of intense negative thoughts, we pay attention. The nervous system is always scanning. It's always deciding whether it's in fight or flight or rest and repair. And negative thoughts put up the antenna for us to be scanning for danger. So this is why negative thoughts can lead to chronic illness, chronic pain, chronic suffering, chronic conditions of all kinds, whether they're mental, emotional, physical. Because when your nervous system is in fight or flight mode, when it's in the stress response activated system, you are in survival. And when we are in survival mode, we cannot rest, digest, repair, and heal because we're simply too busy trying to survive and stay alive, right? So we are in what's called fight or flight response. And if you have not yet seen my video on the fight or flight response and how to stop it, I have several videos. Go check that out. I'm thankful you ignore most of your 80,000 thoughts a day. I have no idea. I have never come across the statistic, and I'm not sure if there is one, for how many unconscious thoughts and unconscious patterns, unconscious instincts we're playing out a day. But I would hazard a guess that it's infinitely more than those 80,000 thoughts that you're consciously thinking. These subconscious thoughts and patterns are also feeding into the autonomic nervous system to keep us alive, like keeping our heart beating, keeping us breathing, remembering for us to breathing in and out. Memories and thoughts in the past, these are all unconscious and quick and so deeply embedded that we don't even recognize them as conscious thoughts. They're completely unconscious or they're subconscious underneath the surface, and they were once conscious thoughts, but they are now repressed and suppressed and denied by us. So there's a couple different things going on with thoughts here. Negative thoughts, all thoughts are basically, they're not really real. They're not tangible. They're just constantly popping up, popping down, popping up, popping down. So it's almost like the weather or the clouds floating by the blue sky, floating by, this bright, big, expansive blue sky with the sun. Then we see a cloud float by, then we see the rain, then we see the thunder, we see everything coming by. So these are all thoughts. They just sort of pop in, pop out, pop in and pop out of this big, great, big mind that we have. Some thoughts are true, some thoughts are not true. Some thoughts are positive, some thoughts are negative, some thoughts are neutral, some thoughts we don't register, some thoughts are subconscious, unconscious, repressed, buried, whatever they are. We don't really need to pay attention to. Our nervous system tells us when we need to pay attention to a stimuli or a thought. If you're imagining them just floating by, that you could reach out and grab. So if a negative thought is just floating by, you can observe it. You can step back into the observer's perspective and just watch it keep going. The negative thought about that person, thing, experience, whatever it is, you can watch it pass by. Or what a lot of us do is we like to grab that thought. As soon as we grab it, our mind is focused on it. It's like we're drawing a great big circle onto this great big thought, and we've grabbed it. And now all kinds of, imagine like a bubble, right? And then like little sticks coming out from the bubble, all kinds of new thoughts come out from that one negative thought. Boom. And we could let those thoughts pass by, but we grab them. We start grabbing all the negative thoughts in the bubble. And once we grab onto it, then another bubble pops out from there. So what was one negative thought that we grab onto, maybe the bubble pops out about 4 more negative thoughts. And when we grab one of those 4 new negative thoughts, maybe from those, 8 new ones pop out from those bubbles, and then 60, and it just multiplies. So this is how we get caught up in a tangled web, almost like a bubble web, of negative thoughts, but at any point we could allow it to pass. But since humans are programmed for survival, we like to grab onto big negative thoughts because we feel in some kind of odd way that we're doing our job to recognize it and really study it, really think about all the possibilities that surround it and all the other negative thoughts and grab onto them because it's a protective mechanism. We are simply protecting ourselves from threat to human survival. Right? If we're not actually being threatened where we need to run or fight, our mind will take it, spin it in a wheel, and it's almost like we're running or fighting in our mind. We'll do the work in our mind. We feel like we are responding to this threat to survival. Let's talk about negative emotions. So we've done a lot of study. I have tons of videos on this channel about negative emotions, and specifically, and you can go back and watch my videos on things like guilt, shame, anger, stress. These are all heavy emotions, overwhelm. So you can go back and look at my videos in depth on all of these negative human emotions. The emotions themselves are what we feel threatened by because they're very dense, they're heavy, they weigh us down, and they're super uncomfortable. All over our body, they're uncomfortable in our heart, in the pit of our stomach. We have emotions that we can't calm down or get a handle on top of. We might have physical sensations rising and bubbling to the surface, and we are threatened by these negative emotions. So emotions are simply energy in motion. So it's usually just a collection of negative thoughts, which we never need to hang on to in the first place. We then start to feel a spiral of a negative emotion. Okay, and these are the dense emotions. These are the vibrational energies that are keeping us sick and stuck and down. So again, if you haven't seen my video on the law of vibration, and then subsequently how the law of vibration and letting go are the answer, go watch those. We get stuck in this energy pool. It's almost a magnetic energy that draws other negative energies to it. And this is why it's hard to heal when we have all these negative emotional energies and these low vibrational states of being. It's hard for us to heal, it's hard for us to rest, it's hard for us to do much of anything because we're attracting. Usually like anger would attract grief, will attract helplessness, will attract hopelessness, will attract shame, will attract guilt, will attract despair. They sort of start to attract each other, and the energies and the density of the energy gets thicker and thicker and heavier and heavier. So now that we know the difference between a negative thought and a negative emotion, a thought isn't energy. It's not energy emotion. It's not a vibrational state. A thought is just simply like a pop-up bubble, something that comes and alerts our system. Good, bad, safe, not safe. They're just thoughts. They're just bubbles rising by in the sea, and we choose whether we grab them or not. Emotions are different. They're energies that have collected in our body that we need to feel before we can let them go. A negative emotion needs to be witnessed. It needs to be recognized. It needs to be felt in its entirety. We can't push it away or turn away from it or simply choose not to grab it. It is already the energy that encompasses us. So we must allow it to be there, witness it, recognize it, feel it, right? Feel that feeling and remind our system it can't hurt us. We're not in danger by feeling this emotion. We're safe. We're going to be okay. And the more and more we turn toward our emotional states, our emotions, our heavy emotions that require us to feel them, and then we train our brain, we train our nervous system that they're uncomfortable and they're hard and they're difficult and we don't want them, but that they're safe for us to feel. And the more and more we can feel them and sit in meditation with them or journal about them or allow them, then they too, those energies will lift and pass. Thoughts are random. They pop up. Like I said, you have 80,000 of them a day. You can't possibly give them all credence or pay attention to all of them. But what happens is human beings focus on the negative because they feel like it's their job to scan for danger, to grab negative ones, to really assess them and figure out whether we need to be worried about them. When we realize that it's a thought, we can ask ourselves a question to figure out, is this a thought or is this an emotion? So when we're thinking a thought and it goes round and round in our head, right, we can never solve the thoughts. We can never do anything at a thought level. The thoughts are just indicators to us. The thoughts are just there to alert us. Okay, so we can stay alert all day, scanning thoughts, or we can allow them to pass like clouds in the sky. We can remember that thoughts are nothing but alert systems, right? Look at the weather, here it's changing. Now we have a denser cloud, now we have a thick cloud, now it's turning into rain, now we have a thunderstorm, now we have a hurricane, now we have, whatever, and then they all pass and it's blue sky again. The blue sky's always there, it's always there, holding the whole thing intact, and all these thoughts are just passing through. We don't need to grab them. And we can remind ourselves at this stage, I'm not in danger. I don't need to hold this thought. This is a choice. So remind yourself, this is a choice. I have a choice to hold this thought or let it go. What do I choose to do? Now, it might take your system a while to the grip of these thoughts is very tight. We grip onto thoughts very tight, almost life or death, and they circle around and we feel we're solving a problem and we can't let them go. Step back into your awareness state and say, hey, what do I choose to do with this thought? I can choose to hold it, think about it, allow it to consume me, try to solve it, or I can simply let it go. Right? I can allow it to pass by. So you get a choice when it comes to thoughts. If you're conscious. If you're unconscious, meaning you're just kind of in a daze of the world and in days of your day, and you're not consciously aware that you get to choose, then all these thoughts will come and you will hold them. You'll get caught up and tangled in their web without realizing it. So the quicker you can become aware, awareness is key. You say to yourself, I'm aware I'm thinking a negative thought. That is the first and most important step that you can do. Because once you're aware, then you can ask yourself, what do I choose to do? I have the choice here. I have full and complete power and control over this thought, whether I choose to hold it or release it, allow it to pass by. Practice over and over, becoming aware that this is a thought, asking yourself to choose, and then releasing it back and allowing it to float away. When it comes to our negative emotions, we realize that these also want to pass. Energies want to pass through us, but now we're in our own energy field. So passing through, energies need to pass through, but they need to pass through our whole being because they're not just floating by in the sky, they're passing through our soul. It's there because we've accumulated enough thoughts, enough of those bubbles, we've grabbed onto enough of them that they've actually changed our energy field. They've actually shifted our energy field and made it more dense. And it has triggered an old wound, an old trauma. So enough of these thoughts that we've grabbed onto in the bubbles have triggered an old wound or trauma that really hurt us, that was a problem for us, that our nervous system has ever since we had this trauma or this event or this experience or this relationship or whatever it is, has been on high alert to never let that happen again, to keep us safe at all costs. And when an old wound or an old trauma is triggered by a collection of thoughts, then we get an old emotion. We hit on a wound, a trauma, and that brings out our energy field in an emotion that we must feel. And every time we come upon these things, we feel the need to protect ourselves, right? To isolate, to shut down, to wall off, to run, to act in anger, to act in aggression, whatever it is that's your pattern. You're playing out a subconscious pattern here. And these energies need to be felt because the old wounds and the old traumas and the old parts of ourselves that have fragmented off And if you have not seen my video on fragmentation, go ahead and check that out. That will give you an idea what I'm talking about. But we need to call these pieces back into our being, the pieces that were lost of ourselves, that we denied in order to protect ourselves. So we grabbed onto anger instead of love or joy as a means to protect ourselves. Or we grabbed onto grief instead of love in order to protect ourselves. So we grab onto these deep emotional energies in our body and they become stuck. And every time we get a collection of thoughts that trigger an old wound, then we need to go back and revisit the wound and feel this deep emotion that we've never ever allowed to feel us because we've been so afraid of it and we wanted to protect ourselves from something of this magnitude ever happening to us again in the future. Use the process of letting go, really understand what emotions are and how to do this emotional work. And when we allow the emotion, just like thought, instead of passing by us, which is what thoughts do, emotions must pass through us. But it's the same process, only it's a little deeper because your soul is involved. We need to actualize these thoughts. We need to integrate them back into our body. We need to become at peace with them. We need to allow ourselves to let go of this wound in our own time and to let go of these things and to really become aware of what's happening. A lot of times when we have negative emotional energies that weigh us down, we don't do that work. We don't remember that there was trauma and there was an initial wound that we need to go back and heal. We just simply are holding on to energies that have been created by thoughts, and we're sort of tangled up in the whole process. So what you really need to know is the process of letting go is super important because you can always become aware. You can always make a choice to let go. And you can always be neutral. You can always observe rather than get tangled in. And then you can always choose to heal rather than run or fight. How do we let go of negative thoughts? Number one, recognize that they are just thoughts. Two, become aware that you're having a negative thought, what it is. Three, choose whether you are going to hold this or allow it to pass. And then four, move on to something else and let them go. When we keep coming back to these thoughts and these huge collections of thoughts over and over, and no matter what we try, we just can't seem to let them go, it's probably because it's not the thought. You need to say to yourself, what is this thought making me feel? What is the emotion behind this thought? Is it sadness? Is it grief? Is it anger? Is it hopelessness? Is it despair? What is the thought? What is the emotion behind these thoughts that I am ruminating on? And deal with the emotion instead, because you are dealing with an energy, a thick energy that is coming from an old wound that needs to be healed. If you can't just allow or choose your thought to pass by, that's when you know that it's really not a thought at all. It's an emotion. So ask yourself, what is the emotion? And then do the letting go process and do the emotional work to release the stuck negative emotion. Okay, so this has been a big one. This has been a big video. There's lots of other supporting videos that will help you understand this better. But I hope this video has been helpful to point you in the right direction. You can choose to let go of negative thoughts, and you can also choose to transform negative emotions. You can do this. You have the power. Your soul wants you to transform and wants you to change and wants you to come through this. It is looking for joy and happiness and love and peace and comfort and all the good emotions and thoughts and feelings that go along with that. And you can get there. But first it must start by letting go of what is there that we do not want. I hope this video has been helpful, and if you have not yet subscribed, please do so, and I will see you in the next video.